Hey everyone, Jen here with Hedge and Fox from hedgeandfox.com talking about how to make a felt pansy today. This project doesn't take a ton of supplies. You just need some felt fabric, scissors, markers, embroidery thread, and an embroidery needle. The markers are optional. It's up to you if you want to use them to add some detail. Start by cutting out your petals. You're going to do 2 medium-sized petals in the lighter color felt. And then you're going to do 1 larger size petal that has somewhat of a heart shape to it, again out of the lighter color of felt. We're going to end up putting the petals together kind of like this. This next step is optional. I like to add some wavy lines along the petals. I was looking online at Google images of pansies. Some of them have really crisp, clean lines on the petals. Others are very wavy and have a lot of movement. So for this pansy, I'm going to do one that has a lot of movement to it. I'm just kind of rocking my petal back and forth as I cut some curvy lines, trying to make sure I don't get any sharp corners on them. And again, totally an optional step. It should look something like this when you're done. Next, we're going to cut out 2 medium-sized petals out of the darker color of felt. You can do a pansy that's only 1 color and just use the same color for all of these if you'd like. It'll just maybe not have quite the same detail unless you do use the markers and the thread that you'll see later on in the video to add in some detail and depth to the petals. Now we'll cut out 2 smaller size petals from the darker color of felt with those same wavy lines for that organic feel. This is going to end up sitting on top of the lighter felt to make 1 petal that's two-toned. So you're going to want to cut out a heart-shaped wavy lined petal from the darker felt as well that'll sit on that heart-shaped lighter colored petal.
All right, next we're going to add some detail with our markers. I caution you that if you don't give this proper time to dry, you will end up with blue all over your fingers. So I have a darker blue pen. This is a Tombow brush pen. I honestly typically just use whatever marker I have at home. I've used dry erase markers before. I do like the brush pens because they have such a fine little tip at the end, so you can get it a little thick down here, and then you apply less pressure as you go to the outer part of the petal, and the line gets thinner, which I think looks really nice. And this is a part you can totally skip if you want to make a much faster, more simple flower. I have a lighter color for the lighter petals.
And once you're done, your petals will look something like this, and possibly your fingers something like that, if not worse. The next step I like to take for detailing is to stretch the petals just to get some movement in there. I pinch it in between my fingers and I pull in multiple directions until I get a look that I like for each individual petal. It does end up making the felt get a little bit fuzzy, so you can use your scissors and kind of trim that off once you're all done. Here's what mine look like when I have finished shaping them. Next, we're going to take our embroidery thread and add some line detailing to the petals. Again, a step you can skip if you'd like, but I think it makes a big impact. I want thin lines from my petals, so I'm going to pull out an individual string from this embroidery thread and just use that for this part of the detailing. So you'll thread your needle, add your knot at the end, and grab the heart-shaped petal first. And you're going to take the darker shade and put it on top of the lighter shade and, figure out the positioning you want. And just start putting some lines in there. I like to make my lines inconsistent. I always start them down at the very bottom of the petal in the same spot. But then I like to go all different lengths as I go out into the petal and kind of fan out the lines so that it looks really nice and pretty and add some really nice detail. It's really up to you how many lines you want to add into your petal. You don't have to do as many as I have, or if you want, you can do even more. It just depends on the look that you're going for your flower. The next thing you want to do is tack down that edge so that it does look like one uniform petal. It's important to make sure you don't see your needle coming through the top piece of felt when you tack it down. You're just trying to get to the point where the two are stuck together, but you don't see the needle, you don't see the thread at the top part of the petal. You can also choose to glue it down if you would prefer, if you find that easier. It's really up to you and how you want to do it. Just make sure to tie a knot when you're all done and make sure your petal looks the way that you were hoping for. Once you get lines in all your petals, one thing I did for this flower is I took my dark marker and I went and added a little bit of color to the base of the petals just to add a little bit more depth, a little bit more dimension. Now it's time to put our flower together. You want to start with the top 3 petals, and so you want to make sure that the 2 medium-sized petals are up on the top and the heart-shaped one is down at the bottom base part of the flower. So take 2 of them, take the base and one of the top petals, and you want to put them together face to face. You're going to make sure that the 2 points of the petal match up, put them together face to face, and then I'm using yellow embroidery thread. I want the middle of my flower to be yellow. So I'm going to take my thread and I'm just going to sew them together down at the base with a couple of stitches. It should look something like this when you pull the 2 pieces together. So next, grab your 3rd piece. Again, put them face to face, line up the points, and sew the top 2 petals together with a couple of stitches. So now you can see these are stuck together like so. Grab the last 2 pieces, line up the points, and sew them together as well with a few stitches. Your flower should start to look something like this. The next step is to add the yellow center of the flower. So you're going to want to do 1 petal at a time, and you're going to start by taking your needle and thread and sticking the needle up about 1/4 of an inch from the center of the flower. And you're going to come up through the petal and then go back down, always back down in the very center of the flower. So you will just repeat this step over and over again until you end up with a circular shape in the middle of your flower out of your yellow thread. I like to go 1 petal at a time. I find that keeps things looking the cleanest and helps me stay consistent with my stitch size. I don't focus on the stitch size being exactly the same, but I do like to keep all of the stitches somewhere close to being the same length, always going back down through the very, very center of the flower. The last step I somehow didn't capture on video, but you're going to add your back petals. You just position them where you want them and then use that same technique with the yellow thread to add some more lines to the center, and in doing so you will sew on those back petals. So we're going to add this to a headband Katie made. She has another video how to do a lemon peel stitch where she walks you through how to make this adorable headband, and we wanted to do a collaboration today and go ahead and attach this pansy to the headband. You want to make sure your first stitch is through the flower. You know, the knot will slip right through the crocheted part if you start there. So put a stitch into the flower, make sure it doesn't show on the top part of the flower, and then go through your knotted part of the crocheted headband. And just kind of repeat until you get things tacked down pretty well. I only did 2 or 3 stitches at the very middle of the flower, as you can see here in the tutorial. Once you get that pretty secure, I decided it would be good to tack some of the petals down a little bit more so they didn't stick up quite so much. So I went a little further down on the knot of the headband and tacked down the bottom petal, and then went a little higher up on the top part and tacked down those top petals as well. Always making sure that you don't see the needle sticking through the top when you do add a stitch. You know, you don't want this thread to show through. You're just trying to tack the flower down nice and tight. When you're done with that, you tie your knot, and make sure you tie the knot after going through the felt last, not through the crocheted part. That knot would slip right through the yarn. And once you've tied the knot and snipped the end of the thread off, you're done. And this is what the headband looks like when you're all done. I love this headband. I'm so excited to put it on my daughter this fall. I've got to go find some matching outfits for her. I hope you like it as well. This was my first YouTube video ever, so if you have any feedback on what I can do to make this more enjoyable, let me know. Or if you'd like to see some other tutorials, let me know. I'd love to hear from you in the comment section. If you're not already, follow us at hedgeandfox.com. That's where we post all of our blogs, tutorials, information, so on and so forth. And we'd love for you to join us on our adventure. Thanks everyone for watching. I hope you have a great day.